Hey everyone, and welcome. If you're a first-year nursing or medical student, this one's for you. Think of this as a clinical case file we're opening up together. We're going to break down a challenge you're absolutely going to face in your careers, when your patient is fighting two massive diseases at the exact same time. We're talking about lung cancer and its most frequent partner in crime, COPD. Let's dive in.
So, picture this. Your patient gets a lung cancer diagnosis. That's a tough fight on its own. But what if that's only half the battle? What if, while they're gearing up to fight the cancer, they're also fighting for every single breath against this other relentless lung disease? Well, that's the reality for a huge number of patients. They are literally fighting a war on two fronts, and you have to understand both to have any chance of winning.
And I'm not talking about a rare situation here. Just look at this number. Somewhere between 40 and 70%. Let that sink in. Of patients who get a lung cancer diagnosis also have chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD. That's nearly half, and sometimes way more than half. It's a massive overlap that just changes everything: how you test, how you treat, and what their quality of life is going to look like.
Now, the first thing you're probably thinking is, well, duh, smoking causes both, right? And yeah, smoking is a huge part of the story. But this is the critical piece of the puzzle. Research has shown, loud and clear, that having COPD all by itself makes you more likely to get lung cancer. It is an independent risk factor, full stop. The two diseases are biologically tangled together, not just linked by a shared bad habit.
Okay, so if we're going to manage this two-front war, we have to start by getting to know the enemy. Let's profile that co-conspirator. Before we even touch on the cancer, we need a really clear picture of the first adversary our patient is up against, COPD.
So, what exactly is it? Well, this is the official definition from the Global Initiative for Chronic Obstructive Lung Disease. You're going to hear them called GOLD a lot. The words you really need to latch onto here are progressive, meaning it gets worse over time, and persistent airflow limitation. This isn't like asthma that comes and goes. This is a chronic, constant inflammation that makes it hard to get air out of the lungs.
And yeah, smoking is the big one, by a long shot. But it is not the only cause. And this is so important for you to remember as future clinicians. You might have a patient with severe COPD who has never ever smoked. Maybe because of a genetic thing like alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, or because they spent 30 years working around dust or chemicals. So how do we nail down the diagnosis? The gold standard is a test called spirometry. Basically, we have the patient take a huge breath in and then blow it out as hard and as fast as they can. We're looking at a specific ratio, the total amount of air they can blow out, which is the FEC, versus how much of that air comes out in the very first second, the FEV1. If that ratio is less than 0.7, even after they've used an inhaler, that confirms it. It tells us there's a permanent blockage, and that's the signature of COPD.
Okay, so once we know it's COPD, the next question is, how bad is it? We figure that out using these GOLD staging criteria. It's all based on that FEV1 value, how much air they can get out in 1 second compared to what would be normal for someone their age and size. You can see here, stage 1 is mild. Lung function is still pretty good. But by the time you get to stage 4, it's very severe. The patient has less than 30% of the lung function they should. Knowing this stage is absolutely key because it tells us how to build our battle plan.
So we've got our diagnosis, we know the stage, where do we even start? Well, we start with the first line of defense, the stuff you can do that doesn't involve prescriptions. These are those foundational, often nurse-led strategies that really empower the patient to take back some control. Okay, listen up, because if you remember just one thing from this whole explainer, let it be this: smoking cessation. It is the single most powerful thing a patient can do to change the entire trajectory of their disease. And you, yes you, have a huge role to play. Studies have shown that even 3 minutes of counseling from a healthcare professional can literally double a person's chances of quitting for good.
But you know, it's not as simple as just saying stop smoking. This quote really hits home. The addiction is so much more than just physical, it's deeply psychological. Imagine you've just been told you have cancer. The stress is off the charts. That's a massive trigger to start smoking again. This is why your support and connecting them with more support is so critical. Here's something super practical, a tool you can teach someone in 2 minutes at their bedside. It's called pursed lip breathing. You just breathe in through your nose, then purse your lips like you're about to whistle, and breathe out slowly for about twice as long as your inhale. This creates a little back pressure, which helps keep their airways from collapsing. It eases that awful feeling of breathlessness and gives them a real sense of control.
And that's not all. We've got a whole toolbox of other strategies. There's pulmonary rehab, which is like physical therapy for your lungs. There's diaphragmatic breathing or belly breathing, which helps make every breath more efficient. And even simple things like helping a patient sit upright or use their walker to lean on can make a world of difference when they're struggling to breathe.
All right, so those non-drug approaches, they are the absolute foundation. But for most patients, that's not going to be enough. We also need to open up the pharmaceutical toolkit to really get their symptoms under control.
Now, when we talk about inhalers, this is probably the most important concept for you to master so you can teach your patients. You've got two main types. Rescue inhalers are for emergencies. They work fast to give immediate relief. Think of this as your fire extinguisher. Controller medications, on the other hand, are taken every single day on a schedule. They work long-term to keep the airways open. That's your sprinkler system, designed to prevent the fire from starting in the first place.
But here's the wild part, and it's a huge deal. All that amazing medication in the inhaler is completely useless if it just hits the back of their throat. And get this, studies show up to half of all patients use their inhalers the wrong way. This is your chance to be a hero. Just teaching and reteaching proper technique is one of the most effective things you can do.
The toolkit doesn't stop there. For patients with really low blood oxygen levels, we can give them supplemental oxygen. We sometimes use inhaled steroids, but we have to be careful with those. And please, never forget the basics. Things like the annual flu shot and the pneumonia vaccine are non-negotiable. They are critical for preventing those flare-ups that can be so devastating.
Okay, we've got a plan for the COPD. We're feeling pretty good. And then the other shoe drops, the lung cancer diagnosis. This is where the case file gets really complicated. How on earth is having severe COPD change how we're going to treat a patient's lung cancer?
Well, for early-stage cancer, the go-to treatment has always been surgery. Just cut the tumor out. But think about it. Can someone with really bad COPD tolerate having a piece of their lung removed? It's a massive risk. And this is where amazing technologies like stereotactic body radiation, or SBRT, come in. It's a non-invasive way to target the tumor, and for patients who just aren't good candidates for surgery, the survival rates are pretty comparable. It becomes a really complex, personal decision.
And for more advanced cancer, wow, things have really changed. It's not just about harsh chemotherapy anymore. Now we have immunotherapy. These new drugs basically take the brakes off the patient's own immune system so it can go and attack the cancer. For someone who's already weakened by COPD, this is an absolute game changer. It often means they can live longer with way fewer awful side effects.
And you know, all of this, the surgery, the radiation, the immunotherapy, it brings us to what might be the most important part of this whole case file. Because treating the diseases is one thing, but our real goal, our ultimate goal, isn't just to add years to their life, it's to add life to their years.
Patients in this situation carry what the literature calls a twofold burden. They have dyspnea, that terrifying, panicky feeling of not being able to get enough air. They have a deep, profound fatigue that's so much more than just being tired from treatment. And of course, there's the crushing psychological weight of trying to manage two life-threatening illnesses at once.
And this right here, this is why you can't do this job in a silo. It is absolutely impossible. The only way to provide great care is with a team. You need the cancer doctors, the lung doctors, and right in the middle of it all, connecting everything, is nursing. Your role is to be that bridge, to focus on the symptoms, and to be your patient's fiercest advocate.
So I want to leave you with this question to think about as you start your careers. For a patient who is fighting this two-front war, who is carrying this twofold burden, where do the treatment protocols stop? And where does holistic, compassionate care for the entire person actually begin? The answer to that question? Well, that's where you're going to find the true art of healing.